Welcome back to Cape Lomond. Today we're going to build a country club and we're going to use it as an opportunity again to expand our city services. This budding city is in dire need of some healthcare, so I'm going to repurpose the healthcare clinic and we're going to modify the asset using the dev tool. And I'm going to build some interesting sports facilities that you maybe haven't seen before. I'll show you how to build some custom illuminated pools and we'll create some grass tennis courts rather than using the orange ones they've provided in the game. So the plan for the city is to get a few more points of interest built around our arterial grid. Then I'll really need to get some networks in. We'll be needing a proper highway and some rail services in sooner rather than later, but that can wait for now. Before we get into it, I just want to shout out and give a big thank you to Renjiro. Renjiro is the channel's first Patreon subscriber ever, which is pretty cool. I haven't promoted that stuff before, so if anyone feels like they want to support the channel directly, then links on the channel homepage. And of course, YouTube memberships have been activated on the channel as well, so there's a couple of options if you want to get involved with that kind of thing. But again, big thank you to Renjiro. Alright, let's get on with it. So I'm going to create a bit of a vista and give the impression that this is a destination that you want to arrive at. So a longer dedicated access road should really help with that. I'd rather run the road aiming for the corner, so I'm not too fussed that it's not running off the rotunda access road at 90 degrees. And I'm going to create a simple roundabout, and the idea here is to create a custom car park around it. Although I'm not going to lie, it does bother me just a little bit that it's a bit off kilter in terms of the angle, but it is what it is, and I'm going to run with it. It should afford some nice detailing opportunities for us later on with that car park at the end, and I want to get a bus line running down here at some point, so it'll give a natural turning point for those larger vehicles. Now, creating a simple T section, I want to get the big assets in place before I start building around it, so let's get this clinic in nice and central, and I definitely want to get the upgrades in here too. With that in place, I'd like to get it framed off and decide on what angle from which we're going to build the outline of our tennis courts. I have measured this out earlier to ensure it will fit once we start doing the courts. If you are giving this a go yourself, and I definitely recommend you give it a try, it's not too complicated, you just need to frame it out first. So you're looking for 5x4 units with the paths outlining the courts. It's identical for each one. If you use those measurements, you can't really go wrong. With the outline of the courts in place, I'll get started on the swimming pools. Simple stuff getting these in, just draw a path in whatever shape you want, and then grabbing the road tools, you apply a key wall on just the inside edge of each pool. Once that's done, it's just a case of dropping the elevation down on the inside of the pool, but we'll come back to that and we'll do that later. There'll be some surface painting and lighting required to finish it off, okay? So let's quickly wrap up the outline for the pool, and we can just extend off the paths a little bit and box it off. With the main outline of the leisure area in place, let's expand the road and decide on a place for a little bit of commercial and maybe a park asset. A little on-site restaurant or something like that would be a pretty nice addition, wouldn't it? And on the other side of the development, I want to create a little service area. I'll come back later and maybe do a smaller roundabout here as well. It does look a little bit big, doesn't it? Ideally, a number of industry assets would have been nice here, but they all come with chimneys, so it would look a little bit out of place. Single chimney would be okay, I reckon. It could be like an old boiler room or something like that. One thing that didn't look out of place, however, was these little ore storage assets. They are a perfect fit as a kind of storage area for materials, you know, for the club maintenance. I don't want to go overboard with these, but they do make a nice little addition to the build, don't they? And that pretty much covers it for the buildings here. We'll see how things grow in here. If we don't like the look of it, we'll just delete it, let things grow back in. And yeah, we'll see how that develops over the course of the build. Now initially I wanted to create a little nature walk with a dirt road, but on reflection the road is just too wide. It looks out of place, so a little dirt path or something would have been a nice addition, but it doesn't exist other than using your own custom textures, so I'll revisit this and we'll get something better back in. With the terraforming, I want to create something of a moat effect almost, if you like, here, and I think this does add a little bit of character to the entrance of the building, taking the water right up to it. So just a case of loading terrain around the club, smoothing out the edges. We'll use the water tools, we'll get this filled in, and we'll hope and pray that I don't flood the damn thing. Now, with the water in, I'll need to get the main car park outline done. So first thing is to use the invisible car park from the dev tool. Same as the last episode, guys, we just used the same asset here, and I'll use a series of simple curves to get that in place. Same on both sides. Now with snapping on, it's just a case of running the surface tool around the outside of the parking asset, and that's a working car park in place ready for detailing. That dirt road is now gone, and in its place I've created a loop for our country club sims to enjoy, get a little bit of a walk in. To give it a little bit of interest, I've created a small hill for a little mini hike, and it should give us some nice views into our downtown area later in the build. Now that we've finished up the path going up the little hill, we can have a quick look at the progress. That's most of the big building blocks of this build in place now. I quite like the corner position framed off by the surrounding water, as well as the future arterial roads. I think that boxes it off quite nicely, doesn't it? Alright, with that in place, we're going to move on to our tennis courts. The method in terms of getting the ground markings in place is to simply use the long parking decal from the dev tool asset list, and we're going to frame these courts in first. So what I mean by that is that we're going to have the court exactly the width of the decal from the bottom left corner. So I'm going to put a decal on each court, both horizontally and vertically in that corner. With these markings in place, we can get the first of the court markings in place. So if you're building several courts like I did here, and they all have the same orientation, then I'd recommend putting them in like I'm showing you here, one section for all the courts at the same time. It can be a bit fiddly rotating these things, so once you have the orientation just the way you want, just repeat it on each court before moving on to the next part. It'll save you quite a bit of time. Now that we've added the first corner of each of the tennis courts, we can remove the temporary framing decals. So just a case of bulldozing them as you'd normally expect. Spinning the asset 90 degrees, we can continue building out the white lines of the court. I'll time-lapse this little section as there's not too much to explain more here. It's just a case of finding the right angle and repeating the process on all of the courts. Don't forget, troops, a like and a comment really does help the video. If you can take a second to do that, I'd really appreciate it. Cheers. With the tennis markings in place, we'll get the surface tool out. I like the look of the checked grass for the outside and the lined grass for the playing area, but feel free to have a play about with the surfaces, see what you like the look of. Doesn't have to be what I'm showing you here. And then it's just a case of picking the corners and completing each of the areas. Searching for tennis in the dev mode will give us a list of the assets that we're going to use next. The net isn't big enough to stretch the whole area, so we'll just need to plant 2 of them to stretch the full playing area. And again, just keep the orientation the same. And it looks pretty good. The tennis umpire chair and the tennis benches, these are the props that we're going to use for the player props. For the lighting, the Light Pole Commercial 02 is definitely the best choice here. They give a directional lighting effect and they look excellent at night. They're the most realistic ones for the tennis courts as far as I can find, so definite recommendation if you're doing your own one here, guys. To complete this part of the build, it's just a case of getting the right fencing in place. See here, we're after the fence industrial piece high 01. Personally, I prefer to just draw a straight line over the full length of the build and then remove the individual pieces of fencing that are surplus to requirements. It's just easier to get a straight line effect doing this. So yeah, that's the way I would certainly recommend it. If you get any gaps or any overlaps, then you can just delete or build back in as required and pop the sections back in one piece at a time. You just line it up and overlap with Anarchy on, just like how you saw me do it with the tennis courts. It's exactly the same idea, but you can get a nice tidy edge and a nice tiny corner on these fence builds. And there we go, 6 custom tennis courts in 4 minutes. Well, might have taken me a bit longer than that, but that looks well decent, doesn't it? At night with the lighting we put in, it looks spectacularly good, I think. I've got some ideas for more custom sports stuff like this, but that'll be a few episodes down the line, I reckon. And that's assuming the game save will survive the update coming on Monday. But we'll wait and see, fingers crossed. Now let's finish off the path network. I'd like some key wall at the front, and I want a more natural fit at the rear of the development. The idea here is to create an attractive area that people can visit and enjoy when they visit the club. Adding a bit of variety and interest like this really helps to add to the aesthetic of the build. So here, it's just a case of joining some paths up and smoothing things out a bit. With that in place, and I've tidied it up a little bit, I'll spend a bit of time lowering the ground in the swimming pools, and I'm going to use the water tools to fill them up. These small water areas can be a bit difficult to get the levels just right, so if you're doing this kind of thing, just save your game first. If you don't get it in first time and you flood it, it's no big deal, just load the game save and try it again. It's a little bit trial and error, but you'll get there. Now what I'm going to do here is just jump ahead a little bit in the build so I can show you how to get the illuminated pool effect. It's a little detail that makes a big impact, and if I had it tucked away in the detail and time lapse, you could easily miss it, and I do want to show you guys how to do it. So the asset that we're looking here is the walled light. Just orientate it the way you want, pointing towards to the middle of the pool, and just plant it. Line the walls of the pool, and you're good to go. Simple as that. Okay, so that's all the big structural stuff done now. We can crack on with the detailing. So let's get the car park in order. Circle tool for this, we're going to start off with some little bushes, then we'll use the big pine, and we'll use a couple of small oaks in the middle to bulk it all out. Circle tool again for the outline of the car park. So lots of props to choose from if you're making your own car park here. You've got different decals, electric vehicle chargers, you've got barriers, parking signs, loads of stuff to choose from, so have a play about with that and see what you can create yourself. And drop a few trees in, give it a little bit of height and a little bit of contrast, and once they're in, I'll plop down some little bushes in the inner circle as well. We can finish off that part of the build by key walling with an outer path and connecting it to the main build key walls. Just a final few decals to add, and I think that gives a fittingly grand entrance to the posh country club. What do you think? Before I get onto the big detail and effort, I need to make sure I'm happy with the surfaces first. I think having a couple of grassy areas provides a nice contrast, and I don't want to go mad with the manicured looking checked grass either. It's quite a striking effect, so I want to contrast that against some of the plainer surface effects. But I think a few little areas does look pretty good, and the plainer grass areas, I'll reserve that for extending some of our sort of manicured park areas. For our pool areas, using grass obviously would look a bit weird, so we're going to use some of the concrete or path textures, and within each of the two pool areas, we'll contrast that with some cobblestone and wood effects. So let's fence all of this off. Always makes quite a difference getting a bit of fencing detail in, doesn't it? I think some hot tubs would be pretty nice over near the smaller pool. I think this is the right point for a detail and time lapse. I'll get those pools decorated. I've got loads of lighting to get installed. I'll look to get a repeated fountain vibe with corresponding bushes and trees in surrounding the club at various points. Once you're back, I'll show you a little trick to help mask the fact that this is a medical clinic building and not a country club. You want to see it if you're not aware of it already. It was in Sully's video, but this is specific to this build, so I'll show you exactly what I'm going to be doing. Okay, I'll let the time lapse run now, and I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. Okay guys, let's apply the finishing touches to this build. As I said earlier, I saw this trick on Sully's channel, so props to him for sharing it. Go follow him if you're not already. If you access dev mode, go to simulation, then select debug toggle. Switch over to UI bindings, and under the action section, once you select the object that you want to delete, you can just click on delete. And just like that, you can get rid of the medic sign. And you can do the same with any asset if it's a clickable part of the build. Then to finish it off, we can use Anarchy, and we can drop a couple of carefully placed trees to cover off a couple more signs. The ones here at the upgrade section we'll leave. I think having trees there would maybe be a little bit too much, but that certainly helps, doesn't it? I would like to have put a sign on here of some description, but unfortunately my Find It mod is not working, so I can only use DevTool, and these signs unfortunately are just blank using DevTool, so we'll leave that for now. Let's check out some of the detailing close up. The security cabin and barriers, I reckon, help give this facility an air of exclusivity. All the detailing in the car parks is definitely worth it, and we've got a nice vista looking back down to the cemetery district we did in the previous episode. Having a look at the commercial that we zoned in, we didn't quite get the restaurant I'd have liked, but that's okay. I don't think you can really tell from a distance anyway. So here's the park we extended out with a bit of basic bush lining and paving. We'll have a peek through the fence here. Now, that looks like a nice spot to chill by the pool, doesn't it? The textures and the different props work really well here. It's a good mix of seating, tables, props like heat lamps, lighting do add a bit of interest as well. I wish we could have made the pool without the barriers, but what can you do? Now that we're up close and personal, I'm going to say these tennis courts could pass for an in-game asset. In fact, I think they look better than the in-game asset, but I might be a little bit biased. Here's the view from the top of a little hill. Although there's not much in terms of elevation here, it does still afford some expansive views over the undeveloped land. We're going to have our downtown eventually to the south, and to the west we're going to have a more tourist focused area. And again, that's assuming we don't have issues with this game save file, so yeah, we'll see. I'm going to show you some cool daytime and some nighttime overview shots of the build now. Enjoy. Hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly enjoyed making it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.